Good evening. Thanks for joining us for our December end of the year 2022 Davis Electric Vehicle Association. I'm Richard Bode, member of the leadership team. We've got Katrina Sutton, who's helping change the slides, and Chris Granger, who's executive director of Cool Davis, is here as well. Katrina, why don't you go to the next one, which I think is a little repetition. Let's go. Yeah, just a little housekeeping. Just remind people, if you want to mute, keep yourself muted. That way we don't get any background noise, dogs barking or chatting there. But if you do want to talk, feel free to use the chat to ask questions, and we'll keep track of what's going on with that. And then there's a way to share your video if you want to turn that off and on. Most of you are pretty experienced at using Zoom. Next slide. Okay, so the big news. So we got a pretty good agenda for tonight's program, and we're gonna, as we always do, we start off with hot topics. Just anyone wants to bring up something new they've heard about EVs. And then we'll take a short moment of time to do that at the beginning. Then we're going to ask our first speaker, which is Vaishnavi Karanam. Vash, did I pronounce your name right? Your last name?
You were very close.
Okay. What is it?
Vaish. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and the last name, Karanam.
Last name was perfect.
All right. Well, 1 out of 2. I'm batting 50%. Okay, and she's going to talk about how disruptive are unreliable EV chargers. And Vash is right now at the Institute of Transportation Studies at UC Davis. And then we're going to have Eugen Dunlap, in Germany known as Eugen Dunlap. And he's going to give us he's had actually a lot of traveling time, seeing a lot of different EVs and EV shows. He's going to give us some slides of what he's seen this year. And then we're going to quickly talk at the end of some planning ideas. And that's about it. So with enough said, why don't we go to hot topics? Next slide. And Katrina, this is one of the things we talked about. Once we get to the presentations, it's a little hard to keep putting the screen back up again, but we'll see. Does anybody out there want to share anything on they've heard about EVs or comments about EVs they'd like to bring up? Short things
or quick questions also.
Okay.
I don't want to get too deep into this, but I've started looking for some replacement tires for my Kona. Not that I need them immediately, but and I'm not seeing a lot of specialized tires for EVs. And again, not to get too deep into it, but anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, Patrick, I have you talk to Larry Melton out there, who just replaced his tires on his Kona.
Oh, okay. What did you get, Larry?
I got Michelin. Let's see. Let me see if I can remember.
Primacy.
The Primacy all season radials, and I'm really happy with them. I like them very much.
Yeah, this is Peter. I mean, I don't recommend any special tires. Just get whatever you want. I mean, on my Tesla, I replaced the wheels, put completely different tires on them, and I've been running on those for 9 years and had absolutely, well, not the same tires, but the same size and brand for 9 years, and I've had absolutely no problems, and it didn't change my mileage at all, not one bit. So I don't think there's that much difference. I mean, unless you get really crappy tires, I don't think your mileage is going to go down too much.
Good thoughts. Thank you.
Ooh.
There are some EVs. My Volvo is one of them that actually has a special tire that is only available for that car. They're what are they? They're Pirellis, And they have a VOL on the sidewall for Volvo, and then they have a ELCT for electric. So they're only provided for that one specific car. But in that case, I did replace I got a flat, and so I replaced it like for like, because I didn't want to buy four new tires. I figured I could just get one.
So if you want to go online, I pulled up a bunch of good articles, especially from Michelin guys, because they, manufacture a lot of their tires specifically for some EV. Like I think they do a lot of specifics for Teslas that are tires made just for their EVs. And there is a lot of discussion out there about, how much efficiency you'll lose on some of these. So
Yeah,
I think,
that's what I've been hearing. That's what my concern.
yeah. So I think, the primacy that Larry got seems to work pretty good. I think, Larry, you said you didn't lose much at all in efficiency.
No, I didn't notice any drop in efficiency at all.
Yeah. And then look out for those sales, a lot of sales in the Michelins.
Yeah.
So Eric put up in the chat something about he's interested to know how the Goodyear electric drive compares to OEM. Actually, Eric, you didn't say what kind of car you have. I actually probably did earlier. Just flash up what kind of car you have. But
Yeah, I looked at the Pirelli site, and they didn't have anything for my car.
yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I think we could actually do a whole show just on tires.
Yeah.
Because after
Yeah.
talking to Larry, I decided I got 50,000 miles on my Bolt. I started thinking I should look at new tires. And then I spent I swear I spent a couple of mornings just looking at links on the internet about tires. So
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one last thing about my Tesla though. So the tires that came with it were Michelin's, Pilot Sport, I think they were. And I got a whopping 15,000 miles out of them before they had to be replaced.
right.
And so I would joke with people because they'd ask how much does it cost to run your car, and I'd say, well, it's about 6 cents a mile for electric and 6 cents a mile for rubber, because those tires were expensive and they didn't last very long. So that was another reason why I went to the different tires, was because I couldn't see replacing tires every 15,000 miles.
Oh, wow. Well, I was one at Saks EV shows in at the Sacramento Auto Museum over there, and they had, and that was the day anyway. They had a guy from Michelin actually came in. He was taking surveys, and he asked, "Gee, how many miles you got on your Bolt?" And I said, "Jim, getting great efficiency. I got like 50,000 miles." But and he kept telling me, "Oh yeah, the efficiency gets even better as they get a little older because they wear. There's less weight." So I was like, hey, I don't know, pretty soon I'll have to change it.
Well, another reason why the mileage gets better though, if you think about it, the diameter of the tire gets smaller, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the distance you travel on the odometer, it says you went a mile, you didn't actually go a mile. So you don't have to expend as much electricity to go that shorter distance. That's why your mileage improves. That's the main reason. I think, and the reduced weight and inertia definitely is something, but I think it's the distance. Personally.
Okay. You convinced me. One of these times in 2023, we're going to talk about tires. Okay, why don't we move on? We're going to move on to our first item.
Are there any more questions or items? That was just one topic. Was there any others out there?
I'll shut up about tires. No more.
Yeah, that's a whole show I want to have just on tires. Yeah. Okay. So our first item, and Katrina, you want to turn that first slide? And we're going to let Vaish talk about, and she's doing work at the Institute of Transportation Studies, UC Davis. Remind me, Vaish, are you a postdoc over there?
No, I'm a PhD student.
Okay, she's a PhD student. Great. And I'm going to let you just take it away and share your screen.
Cool.
And tell us, actually, this is actually a lot of people have told me they really want to hear about this. There you go.
Can you see my slides?
Yep.
Cool.
That's good.
Okay. I was muted for a second. I'm going to start over. So today I'll briefly talk about the general state of public EV charger reliability and also a few projects we're working on at ITS to evaluate EV charger reliability. So reliable and functional EV charging stations are very important as countries rapidly transition to EVs. I'm sure we all know that. But a recent CARB survey of EV drivers in California reported mixed experience with existing EV chargers, with 53% of drivers needing to contact customer service. Another study conducted by researchers from UC Berkeley evaluated the functionality of open public DCFC charging stations in the Greater Bay Area and found out that around a quarter of plugs were unreliable or had design failures. And these experiences contradict with a simultaneous survey of EV service providers who reported 95 to 98% uptime of their public chargers. So given this contradiction, an accurate assessment of the reliability of existing public chargers is needed to provide guidance for the successful build-out of charging infrastructure. We conducted a study that complemented the UC Berkeley study by evaluating the impact of public charger reliability on EV driver experience. So we analyzed on-road EV data spanning 3 EV models collected over a 1-year period in California to understand the importance of public charging sessions. And we do this by simulating the level of disruption that would have occurred to drivers had those charging sessions failed. We also quantified how many charging sessions actually failed and how disruptive those failures were to EV drivers. So we defined 3 levels of disruption for this analysis. 1, we consider a charging session to be trip disruptive if the next trip cannot be completed had the charge failed. So in this case, the electric range remaining prior to the charging session isn't sufficient to cover the next trip. So looking at the timeline on the top of the slide, the driver cannot reach his next trip destination, in this case, the supermarket, had the charge in the beginning of the timeline failed. Similarly, a charging session is considered charge disruptive if the next charging location cannot be reached had the charge failed, and a charging session is considered day disruptive if all trips that occur after the charge on that day cannot be completed had the charge failed. And note that all the sessions used in this analysis were successful, so we're simulating how much disruption the driver would face had those successful charging sessions failed. So out of the roughly 10,200 successful public charging events, around 9% of the sessions were trip disruptive. This implies that in 9% of charging sessions, if those charging sessions were unsuccessful, EV drivers would not be able to complete subsequent trips as planned without locating and using another functional EVSE within the electrical range remaining of their EV. And another 35% of sessions were charge or day disruptive. And this implies that if those sessions were unsuccessful, EV drivers would need to alter their planned or habitual charging behavior and charge their EV sooner than initially intended in order to successfully complete all trips within that day. And charging sessions linked to high levels of potential disruption are associated with long distance travel, low battery state of charge, and lack of access to home charging. So the trip, charge, and day disruptive charges that we identified don't necessarily imply that an EV driver would be stranded at some point in the day if those charges has failed. For instance, if a trip disruptive charge had failed, the EV driver could quickly find another charger nearby and finish their next trip. So in this case, finding another charging location may be very inconvenient to the driver, but this isn't the worst case scenario. And this is why we also identified highly critical charging sessions without which EV drivers may potentially end up being stranded. So a successful charging session is considered highly critical if the EV cannot reach the next nearest charging location had it failed. And we ended up finding that in around 3% of successful charge cases, drivers were one unsuccessful charging session away from being stranded, which means they did not have sufficient range remaining to get to the next nearest charging station. And most of these critical charging sessions occurred in low charging station density areas within the Central Valley and rural Northern California. Okay. We also quantified observed unsuccessful charging sessions from our data set and then qualify how much of a hassle the unsuccessful charging sessions were to EV drivers. So we found that around 7% of all logged charging sessions were unsuccessful, and the 7% is an underestimate of the true charge failure rate, as it doesn't include charge failures where drivers realized the charger was broken before plugging in their EV, because we only look at logged events. So if like the plug was actually in the car and that was recorded in our data set. So 96% of these unsuccessful charging sessions were only slightly disruptive, as EV drivers quickly discovered the failure and drove to a different charging station immediately. 4% of these unsuccessful charges were moderately disruptive, as the EV driver discovered the failure several minutes or even hours after the beginning of the charge attempt. The average was 3 hours in this case. And 2 unsuccessful charging sessions were very disruptive, as in the EV driver did not have enough electric range remaining to complete the next trip. So in these 2 cases, EV drivers were basically stranded and their EVs needed to be towed to reach the next charging location, which is the biggest nightmare scenario. And these occurred at locations with relatively lower charger densities. Again, I think this was near the outskirts of Bakersfield, near Death Valley, and the other one was in Truckee. Okay, so there are several electrical, mechanical, software, communication, and logistical factors within the EV charging ecosystem that influence the reliability of public EV chargers. On the electrical side, the components within an EVSC's in-cable control box are responsible for temperature monitoring, contact monitoring, leakage and current detection, and so on, to ensure a safe supply of power to the EV. So failure within even one of these components can make the charger unreliable and potentially unsafe. On the mechanical side, the external components of the chargers are prone to damage from various environmental factors like rain, or dogs can chew on the cables. And on the communication side, configuration errors, line damage, power loss, traffic spikes, hardware failure anywhere along the communication network within the ecosystem may cause reliability issues, as it can interrupt the flow of information between the different actors in the charging ecosystem, because EVSPs need to have consistent information about the charger's status in order to monitor it and make sure it's always up for users. And on the logistical side, membership requirements, payment issues, complicated EVSC instructions, difficulty locating EVSCs, lack of EVSC availability, and poor self-service can make charging less reliable to consumers. So even if the charger is working, all of these requirements can make it really challenging for consumers to actually find it accessible to use these chargers. So this figure extends these technical and logistical factors to all actors in the EV ecosystem, where each stakeholder is color-coded with the potential factors that can compromise EV reliability. So the most common EVSC reliability metric so far is uptime, or the time during which a machine is in operation. According to recent rulemaking for projects under the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program, uptime is defined as the proportion of time when a charger's hard drive and software are both online and available to use or in use, and the charging port successfully dispenses electricity as expected. So the calculation excludes the hours of outage caused by reasons outside the control of the charging station operator, such as electric utility service interruptions and internet service provider interruptions. And we find that this definition may be insufficient to measure EV charger reliability experienced by consumers, which is why UC Berkeley and we are finding the consumers are having a lot of issues with EVSPs. So from the perspective of an EV driver, a reliable charger successfully charges their EV for the expected duration at an expected rate after accepting an appropriate payment method. Uptime as it currently is defined does not take into account all the possible technological and logistical challenges that we covered in the last slide within the ecosystem that ultimately determines the true reliability of charging ports that's experienced by consumers. So we offer these recommendations to policymakers to overcome the shortcomings of uptime and better serve consumer charging needs. A set of reliability metrics that capture the technical and logistical failures of EV chargers should be clearly defined, and there should be a standardized method to measure these metrics. It's really common for a lot of EVSPs to have, there's no standardized method to calculate uptime and measure various factors that go into calculating it. So it has to be standardized somehow, and there should be third-party audits to make sure everyone's on the same page when it comes to calculating any reliability metric. Stakeholders should also explicitly enforce frequent and thorough maintenance and servicing of EVSCs. And maintenance should include repairing damaged EVSC parts, removing garbage or obstacles surrounding the charger, and ensuring that software and communication protocols are functional. Stakeholders should also have higher reliability standards for chargers that are deemed to be more critical for consumers. And this can be in the form of higher uptime or the installation of more chargers in locations with those critical chargers, so that if one charger goes down, there will be an alternative. So our study indicated that not all charging failures are equally disruptive. A charger in a low charging density area along a long distance travel route is held to the same reliability requirements as a charger in a high charging density urban area. And this is a problem because the consequences for a charge failure in low charging density areas can be more dire than the consequences for charge failure in a high charging density areas. Is the difference between being stranded in the middle of nowhere and being a little annoyed about driving less than a mile away to the next nearest functional charger. Charging reliability standards for EVSCs in a given location should take into account the location's charging station density and the station's associated utilization rate for this reason. EVSC signage should include instructions to locate the next nearest charging port in case of a charge failure. So if reliability standards are lower in locations with high charging station redundancy or density, signage to more easily locate the next nearest charging point would lower the level of driver disruption associated with more frequently encountering inoperable charging ports. It would also be beneficial to collect metrics associated with all charging sessions occurring at each station on a monthly basis to help researchers and policymakers analyze that information and gauge the reliability of those chargers. Finally, in addition to monitoring the operational status of EVSCs, charging station operators should also monitor the usage patterns of EVSCs, as any detected usage gaps may uncover a reliability issue. EV drivers are likely to habitually charge their EVs in the same public charging locations along their daily travel routes. So any sudden gaps within the usage pattern of a given charging location could reveal a technical or logistical failure that standard reliability monitoring protocols fail to capture. I'm going to skip this because I feel like it's a bit unnecessary. I'm going to go over. Okay, that's the end of it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Vash. Do we have, I've got to look at the chat too. Any questions you want to bring up?
I'd like to bring up a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I think this is very good for a very intellectual and very academic study, but it really doesn't address the problem. I put in the notes here that it appears that charger companies aren't making any money, frankly, and they can't afford to do sufficient maintenance. And you can have all the rules in the world, but that's not going to fix the problem. And also, I think 7% is way low. I don't know where in the world you got that figure, but just personal experience is that these non-functional, barely functional chargers are just, I would say the figure's more like 50%, 60%. Thank you.
No, yeah, we do know it's very low. But again, I mentioned that those are only the events that we uncovered through our data. So like let's say like if a plug is actually plugged into a car and that's recorded in our data set, then we can flag it as a failed charge. But if like the plug is broken, we're not going to know because that plug-in event never happened in our data set. So we do understand that that's an underestimate. But even with that, 7% is quite a bit. for an underestimate.
Did
And
you
I
use
see-
Berkeley data? I'm sorry, did you use the Berkeley data or did you generate your own data? I didn't get that.
We used our own data set. Let me go back to that slide. The slide is very annoying. Yeah, so it's our own data set. So we installed loggers in around 400 EVs and collected data from them for a 1-year period for each car. So we have on-road driving and charging session data from those vehicles, and we
So-
use that to calculate.
These were loggers in the cars. Did
Yeah.
you get any comments from the drivers?
This was conducted a while back, so I don't think we specifically asked for reliability related questions.
Oh boy, this is terrible because, you know, what if a driver has to make a 20-minute phone call to charger support? You know, is your logger going to report that it was a successful charge?
It depends on, so how we like determined if a charging session was unsuccessful is looking at how much energy went in from the charger to the car's battery and how long that charging session lasted. So if the plug-in event lasted for like less than 5 minutes and like a very small amount of energy went into the battery, that's flagged as an unsuccessful charging session. But obviously, like charging attempts when the driver realized that the plug was broken or that connection was not made to log an event on our end was not flagged as an unsuccessful charge because we didn't detect it. So 7% is an underestimate.
I'm going to post a link in the chat here that proposes an indexing system, a way to rate or calibrate or report charger failures. And there's so much more to it than broken couplers and broken connectors. I just would like to have seen a little more, you know, real life situations here reflected in your results, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
A small comment I would like to make is that very often, if, let's say we have a bank of chargers, people try out one charger, it doesn't work, they go to the next one, it works, they never report the broken chargers. And I'm so annoyed by it because I've asked them, you know, if there's something not working, you have to give us feedback. If you don't give us feedback, you cannot complain afterwards.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good point.
So, you know, maybe Vaishnavi, if you can give me a little background to help me. And on a statewide level, is there like a, you know, infrastructure charging czar or something? I mean, whose responsibility is it to keep the chargers going? Is it each provider itself is independent?
See, that's kind of why, because there isn't. So Jim was kind of right in saying that a lot of EVSPs don't have the incentive to keep their chargers functional. They get state funds to install these chargers, but then they have no real incentive for upkeep because they don't get a lot of money from these chargers being used, right? There's someone else working on a project that deals with the business modeling of this scenario. So there is the NEVI regulations, which I kind of talked about, that kind of details very like high level overview of how to like define reliability standards for EVs or EV chargers. But if I have to point to one person that is responsible for making sure EV chargers are functional, there's no one really.
Okay. Yeah.
The regulations can exist and create incentives for EV service providers to, I guess, keep their chargers reliable. But I don't know, that more has to be looked into it.
So this is, I think, one of the advantages Tesla has, right? Because,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, they're selling the EVs and they're selling their charger units too. So they have a, you know,
They have a
stake in
direct
making sure.
incentive to make sure their chargers work because it's connected to their company's name and their cars.
Yeah.
So,
So that
so
incentive exists, but yeah.
that was a question that I had. Did you look at Tesla versus others, charge point, I guess, or did you ask the question?
So we did like map our data to like actual EVSBs, and obviously Tesla did better than any of the other EVSBs as expected. So there's proof of that. ChargePoint did probably the worst. Yeah.
And then one of the questions, another question I put in the chat was speed of charging. Did you have a question about that? Because we noticed on a trip to LA that some of the charging places took forever. They were much slower. You had to move around and try to find the one that would be the faster of a group.
So most of these chargers were level 2 or DC fast. We kind of distinguished them here, I guess. So hold on. Based on my study, which is not a survey, so we didn't ask consumers questions about charging speed, but we did find that DC fast chargers were more critical than level 2. So if a DC fast charger failed, that was more of a issue to the driver, because usually these are during long distance trip routes, and finding another DCFC charger nearby can be difficult. And if you can't, you might end up being stranded. So that's the conclusion from this study, but it's not a survey, so we didn't ask any question to consumers.
I want to make sure Peter has a question and can say hi. And you're muted.
We still can't hear you,
Peter.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, I am unmuted. No, I'm not. You can hear me now, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So, comment, and that is, if you in this set of data, if someone pulled into a charger, plugged in, and the charger didn't work, and then they unplugged and went to the next one, which is right next door, or they used the second charger on the same unit, and it did work, you would have recorded a charge failure, right? Because they plugged in, but nothing happened. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So in that case, so in that case, the things would work, and so the only time that you wouldn't have gotten a recorded charge failure is if the unit was obviously out of service, like the screen was black, or the cord was cut or something, and so they just never even bothered to try because they knew it wouldn't work. And then one other question I had, which is more of a smart question rather than an actual question, but if you could go to the oh wait, hang on, I do not want to do this. If you could go, let's see, back, I think the slide that had all of the different elements of the charging process with the car and the charger itself. Yeah, that one there. Oh, yep, that's it. So EV user, it says software failure, communication failure, logistical failure, and I'm just curious. EV user is what, the person? So how would the person have a software failure?
It's the person using the phone. So there's a malfunction in their phone.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's why I said it was a smart question.
No, it's a good question.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Good. Any more questions or statements?
This is Frank, and I was wondering if the chargers tell the provider that they're having a failure, and if not, why not? And if they do, does it make any difference? Because if the providers have no incentive to keep maintenance going.
No,
but anyway, those are 3 questions.
Really good questions. They're supposed to, technically. So let's see if there's a charging station operator. If you look at this image, and they're kind of linked to the charging stations. They're supposed to get data on like an hourly basis to make sure that these charging stations are working. But if a charging station, let's say like in the middle of nowhere along a long distance trip route is broken, are they going to go fix it if they figure out that it's broken? Unlikely, because first off, that station doesn't get used very often. Most people don't travel in long distance trip routes very frequently. So they don't really have like an incentive to spend the money required to go and get that fixed, because they're not going to get a lot of money from doing that. And also, in some cases, the information flow between charging stations and the service or the station operator can be disrupted because of network issues. So they might not know that a charger is damaged if it is, because the network doesn't send that data because of multiple issues within the network. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Lots of problems, but yeah.
This is Jim again. I would just suggest that you try to get more driver input in your study.
No, we're working on that. We have another survey that we're actually talking to EV users to figure that out. This is just an intro study. It doesn't cover everything, obviously.
Please reach out to me. I really have some strong ideas about this. And
sure.
Also, you know, the law requires that they have a card reader, a credit card reader, so you don't have to sign up to their stupid membership programs.
Yeah,
and,
there's like an interoperability rule that CARB passed, I think, last year to do that. Yeah,
exactly. And that, you know, if they're having trouble paying for the charging session, I don't think that would show up in your data also. So I'm not sure about that. So anyway, that's my comment.
Right.
One last quick question though. So is there a requirement for a card reader, credit card reader on the charger, or is it just a requirement that you be able to use a credit card? So in other words, if you called a number and read off the credit card number and they enabled the charge session, would that meet the spirit of the requirement, the CARB requirement, or do they actually have to have a card reader on the charger?
I can't speak to the card reader requirement, but I know CARB, they have a interoperability requirement, so it's eliminating the need for memberships, because usually you need to have a membership for each of these service providers in order to use their chargers. I'm not sure about the card requirements. Maybe Jim can speak to that.
Okay.
Sorry, was that Peter that just spoke?
Yeah, that was Peter. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know, but I know that all the chargers that I'm seeing fortunately have those NIAC readers on them. And I believe that's probably what the law is intending to provide.
Okay, that's fine. I just was curious. Thanks.
Okay. Any more questions? So, you know, the only thing I'd add, I think the the reliability of these chargers is going to be a major issue of trying to move up to getting more people to buy EVs. And I said this actually before we got on the air to Vaishnavi and Katrina too. Is you know, I've got a home charger, 220 charger, 240 charger, and then I lost access to that for about a 6-week period, and I was using trickle charging on. Boy, it didn't work too well, so I had to start going to DC fast charge just to be able to use my Volt again instead of it only being something I could take to the grocery store. So I almost forget about the early days of getting my first EV, getting my first Leaf, and I was scared to death how I was going to get my next charge. So
yeah, and there's 2 points of view on this, and one is, you know, the problem that you had could be resolved if you had an outlet instead of a DVSE, and then you could just use your portable charger. Then if that failed, you could use a different one. But then there's also been some issues about reliability of the outlet and that sort of thing. So there's pluses and minuses. So
yeah, especially while they've got these great EV targets now, getting EVs on the road, but if that infrastructure is not there, it's going to be hard to get the, you know, we're the choir here. hard to get
Yeah.
the people who aren't part of the choir.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, and I think this was mentioned before, but I think, in urban areas where there's lots of chargers, reliability isn't as critical. I mean, it can be irritating if it doesn't work, but it's absolutely critical that those long distance chargers that are on the highway between, two places that's in the middle of nowhere, that those things have really, really, really high reliability, because it's critical. I mean, it's like the same thing as being, going, well, like we used to do, going between Idaho Falls and Butte. There's like one place to stop for gas or something, and and if that truck stop was down, we'd be out of luck too. So that's critical. So those ones that are that are the critical chargers, they need to have a super high reliability, or
Yeah.
backups.
Yeah, essentially what this research is trying to do, just point and make sure policymakers know that.
And I think that's what's interesting about that. I get all the acronyms messed up, but like the IRA, the like corridor charging thing they have going on like nationally, there's like very specific rules that I haven't dug into, that they want like 4 150 kilowatt fast chargers in every location, it's either 50 or 80 miles. I'm like, that's like good luck. Like I was looking at some of Nevada's corridors, and I'm like, there's nothing out there.
Doing that, I think we have a little bit of data from them from that program, like corridor chargers.
Yeah, I'm like fascinated. I'm like, A, who uses them and how frequently, and B, like, are they still up? Like, are they down?
Working
Like,
on making
tell me
them
more.
worse, but yeah,
I gotta know. I'm so nosy.
not used very often, I will say that.
Right, but like the concept of them there, I
The
think
fact
really
that
cool.
they're run by the state, like maybe they have an incentive to make sure they work and are reasonably reliable.
I hope. Who knows?
They're not out to just make money. I don't know.
I don't know. I've been following the ones at Camp Roberts at the rest stops, north and southbound, and according to PlugShare, they've been down for, I don't know, 6 weeks or more, maybe.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
So Vash, the one thing I saw in your data that you pointed out was the 2 people that got stuck in chargers and didn't have enough distance there the rest of the way. The only thing I thought about, one of them was in Truckee. I thought, gee, all you got to do there is get the car on the road and push it down the road and let it go downhill. By the time you got to the valley, you probably have a full charge.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, in actuality, though, the Truckee issue isn't an issue anymore, because there's like at least three providers now in Truckee. 4 if you count Tesla.
That's fine. Trying to think. Also another thing, our data is a little biased because most of it is from early adopters. So they kind of understand how EVs work and are pretty decent at planning their route and making sure they don't get stranded. So that's another reason our numbers are so low.
Okay.
Richard, I'd like to add just that there is some conversations, I know among our CCAs in particular, talking about the role of energy providers in, they are the ones who have an interest in the sale of electricity, getting in the business of the implementation and the support of charging. So I'm interested in, also what the state has to say about our electricity providers being more a part of the solution to the bigger picture of, the provision of charging in our corridors, especially.
Oh, that's a great comment, Chris, about that. And how many of these CCPs are operating now in California? You have a good idea? Because I think it's pretty expanded now.
The CCAs?
Yeah, CCA, sorry.
I think there's something approaching 20, covering a large part of the state of California now. But, we still have a long ways to go in terms of that, figuring out who's responsible to make sure that we have a charging network that is maintained. And then we all know we've got a lot of old stuff in the system that we just need to replace. And there's a lot of questions about, was it in the right place at the right before now? And should we replace that, or should we be attending to other locations? But even locally in our own discussion, some of you who tuned in for the discussion about where chargers should be using the SACOG funds in Davis, right there we saw PG&E weighing in on not being willing to support charging DC fast chargers unless they're bundled, unless there's multiple fast chargers being placed at the same place. So they're concerned about redundancy at location in their investment in infrastructure to support those charging stations. So I'm interested in how that's going to impact the future, if they're actually thinking about that now as we are looking at these major implementation strategies that are rolling out.
Yeah. There's a couple comments that I have. I mean, one, what PG&E's their position makes perfect sense, because if you've got, say, 2 DC fast charging plazas and the total is, say, a megawatt, but you have one that's a megawatt or 2 that are 500 kilowatts, it's going to cost them almost twice as much to feed those 2 500 kilowatts as it would to do 1 megawatt, because of all the labor and running the transmission circuits. I mean, yes, the megawatt one is going to require a bigger conductor, but that cost is minimal compared to the cost of running 2 circuits instead of 1. So it makes perfect sense, as long as you can have them still spaced close enough together that people can travel from spot to spot without the risk of, if one charger doesn't work, can I get to the next one, kind of thing. The other thing I was going to say is that, if CCAs want to get into the charging business, that's perfectly fine with me, but I can guarantee you're going to get pushback from the charge service providers now, because they're going to say, no, you can't compete with us. That's not fair. So just be aware that you'll get some pushback if you try it. That's all I got.
I think, Peter, what I've heard is they're looking at setting up collaborative relationships.
Oh, okay.
There's more attention to placement and level of service and maintenance. So there's somebody who cares about those systems being up and running and functioning.
Okay, so they're not, the CCA is not trying to become ChargePoint 2.0. They would work with ChargePoint to put in chargers. Then that's what you're saying,
right? And make sure they're actually maintained and
that I'm sure they'd be fine with that. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that. Thanks, Vash, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, and check out the chat. There's some good comments there. Eric put down, I guess it was in Tahoe, ran into bears. So no lions or tigers, but just bears.
Yeah, just bears the last 2 times and a bunch of coyotes. It's been fun.
Yeah. Hopefully you didn't have too much food in the car.
No, just my own dog. He really wanted me to play.
Yeah.
That's like so wild. I talked to as a side tangent, I talked to a transit agency up in South Lake Tahoe, and they said that they regularly get bears getting on their buses. Like every day they have a bear on their bus, because they just sit outside and the bear's like, it's warm. So I love this. It's like nature fighting back.
I hope there's a back door to get out.
I think, Richard, that should be in the title for our follow-up article in the blog post for this month.
Bears.
Wait, watch out for the bears?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just saying, you get on that bus, hopefully they got a back door so something comes in the front and everybody can pile out the back. But, scary. Okay. Let's move along. Eugen, are you ready? So Eugen Dunlap is going to talk to us about his recent highlights, looking at EVs up and down the state of California. I I shared a couple of emails and texts with Eugen when he was talking about this.
Do you see the pictures? Do you see the picture?
They look good.
Okay.
I was just going to say, he goes having a lot more fun this fall than I did. So.
Well, once in a while, even old people like me get to have some fun. I'm going to give you a visual show of 3 events I went to recently with George Parrott. And one was the Sonos EV at the Alameda Old Naval Air Station. So they're a German company from Munich, southern Germany. And they came over here to do some fundraising. Their spiel is solar panels in the car. So if you look at the hood, you see some solar panels integrated, and they have it on all sides. Interesting, they have moss in the bottom as an air filtration system if you look under the screen. Interesting concept. This is the back here. Again, you can see some solar panels. They only have this car in black, so it covers up the panels and they don't stick out that much. It's interesting how these panels are made up and what their inverters are. So they basically have microinverters for all the sides that only the sun side gets the power sent to the car. And this is the back of one of the solar panels. And here's a good picture. You can see the front car with all these panels. Unfortunately, they're probably going to go into bankruptcy. They have 30,000 orders, but I don't think they're going to make it. They didn't get enough money here. So that was this. Interestingly, they have a 220 outlet, the European outlet for bringing power out of the car. And it could be 110 or 220, wouldn't matter over here. Now, I put 2 pictures in that I had from this Frankfurt Auto Show in 2017. The Toyota Prius had already solar panels on the top. I don't know. I don't think they were ever sold in the United States, if I remember. So it's not a big deal. It's a very good idea, but I don't know if, and the power mounts are not that bad, so big that, it's people would be willing to pay for the solar panels. So the next one is the Peterson Car Museum. They have a display. Well, they basically have 3 displays, and I threw this in really quickly because this is the only place that still has these shows going on. So the Sonos car is gone, and then the LA Auto Show is over. But if you're down there, it is really worth going to the Peterson Auto Museum. And just a visual show of what Tesla is offering there. So one show is just about Tesla and what companies Elon Musk has and the development of the car. And I'm just going to go through it because I have a lot of slides quickly. This was their first carrier for a car. And then these are a couple very interesting comments. Electric cars are an extraordinary bad idea. Can Tesla become a real automaker? It's so interesting to see these comments now. These are Tesla batteries. It was new for me how they put them on a string like that. And if you look into the chassis, you see these strings going from right to left or left to right. The development of their motors. So the first motor's on the left, and then we have the latest motor of the Tesla Plaid on the right side. And then naturally their EV truck. I think that will change the design language quite a bit of vehicles, and we'll see how it goes. Next part is upstairs, electric motorcycles. We've come a long way here too. There's more and more coming on the market. And Building the Electric Future is the third event over at the Peterson Auto Museum. This is a car I've never seen. It's an Italian car, electric sports car. So that's a chance to see things you normally don't see around here. Three-wheeler. We'll see if that comes to the market. This was a Zero again, and the batteries on the side. We have this car at the a similar car at the California Auto Museum. Okay, that's inside Tesla. So if you're down there, I think it goes till next October of 2023. So have a look. It is inspiring. And if you have want to see any of these pictures again, you just go to my site there, and then you can go on YouTube. LA Auto Show. Finally, we had a lot of electric vehicles at the auto show again. Last year, I wasn't down there, but George told me they only had a handful. This year, they had probably over 35 different models. And normally, I'm a pretty rational person in regard to cars, but this one really I fell in love with. This is a concept car, but they're pretty close in bringing it out like this. When you go up to the convention center,
what was the name of that one? That's the guess.
I'm going to show a couple pictures, but it's a Genesis X convertible.
Okay.
When you go up to the buildings, they had all the drive events outside, and because you have with an electric car, you have no problems driving inside the buildings. They had some events where you could drive, well, you could never drive by yourself, but that you would be driven around on a little horse. So all the big car makers were there except for Mercedes. No BMW, no Mini Cooper, no Audi, no Ferrari, no Jaguar, no Rivian, no Mullen, no Fisker, no Faraday Future. We'll see, maybe they show up next time. And these were the test drive cars to come along. I put this Blink photo in because we are thinking at Mere Commons, when our chargers don't work anymore, to switch probably to Blink, because it's a simple system. We can hook up to our network and have some and have charging that way. And that's the Lordstown truck there. This photo is nice because it shows you the platform. So you'll have a common platform for many cars, and what the manufacturers are going to do is just going to slap on a different shape of the vehicle itself, but the platform's always going to stay the same. This is the Indy EV. This is another picture of it. I first saw it at the beginning of this year in at the CES, and I didn't think they'd make it to here, and they're still hanging in there. It's a Southern California company that's trying to get their cars out. We know the Solo. We've had it at our events in Sacramento. Ford had a large display. their trucks. They're coming out with some electric little bikes. So a lot of visuals I'm really only giving to you. So this is a future Toyota car. It's named B like boy, Z like Zulu, 4, the number 4, X like X-ray. And it's a strange name for a car. What it stands for is Beyond Zero. So I'm not quite sure what Beyond Zero means, but this is their new electric car. This look inside of it. And then they had some LQ concepts naturally. It's not all work for us. Once in a while, we get a nice break. We get a tea break at the Nissan event. This is a new Nissan Ariya. It's interesting. This is one version. So it looks like a station wagon, old station wagon with these wood panels, but I don't think it's too nice of a design. This is how it looks inside of the car. We had cupcakes that were just flamed and melted right there. So the big event was really from Hyundai. This is a Hyundai Ioniq 5. They showed 2 new cars. We had the CEO of Hyundai Genesis USA up on the stage, and in the front row, you'll see all the main designers from the company. I mean, you only see the back heads, but they were up there. They showed the new EV6, Ioniq 6, sorry. Your view inside. And then they showed another car. It was a car they developed 75, and it is similar to the DeLorean. And they said DeLorean copied them. Okay, that's fine. I don't want to argue. And this is their car. It's an electric hybrid car. It's a fuel cell car, unfortunately. I don't know why they're still sticking with fuel cells, but it's a fuel cell hybrid electric. And these are the intakes for it. Polestar was pretty big at the event. I get weekly calls from them. Hey, don't you want to get a new EV? So they're putting really pressure on people to get their cars out. Volvo had their EVs out. Kia, their new cars. And then the Chevy Equinox. Chevy had a big stand, and if you look in the back of the picture, it says Altium. That's their company from the GM company that will put in backup power to your house. So each, Ford has their own company, GM has Altium to have a solar and battery backup for your house. This inside of the Equinox, their charge panel flipping down like this is a little different than we're used to. They have the Silverado truck. I was really impressed. The whole thing can go away, the backside of it, and you can open it up. Well, it's the backside of the cab itself. And then VW was naturally there with their little bus. I think it's when they finally sell it, should be a big success. It's a little longer than the European version. So this was the car I fell in love with. And it's a beautiful, just from the design, it's the Genesis X convertible. And I mean, I was lucky to find a moment where so few people were around the car. Normally it was just crazy. And this is their sister or brother car. It's the Speedium Coupe. So it's not a convertible. And they're going to be electric, and it's really going to, I think, be a very successful car. Unfortunately, GMC was hiding their Hummer EV in the back. I had to ask a couple times for it. I don't know why they hide it, because it's a good car and it should have a more prominent display, but that's how they are. This is an interesting London startup company called Charge Cars, and they're inspired by the 1967 Mustang. So they took that shape, pulled it out a little bit. And then Fiat released these cars. So that was the other big event for electric cars. As some of you know, I used to have a Fiat 500. I really loved that car too. It would smile at me when I would go out into the garage. And I was so disappointed that was discontinued, but they're coming back with cars now, and that's a very good news. They have it just in different colors here. And I think this is the last picture, the Lucid Air. They had a special event for only special guests. We snuck in, got a couple pictures, and that was it. Yep, and that is it. If you have any questions, it was a pretty fast presentation because it's just impressions of electric cars, and there's not so much to talk about.
Eugene, this is Joan. You gave your website. Could you give it again?
evsplussolar.org.
Okay.
Why don't you
It's
put that,
just
why don't
there's
you put
where
that
you-
slide up again?
Huh?
Why don't you put the slide up with the, I think with your email address on
To
there?
find
Or,
it.
or
It's
just type it in the chat.
Oh, good
Yeah, I'll
idea.
put it
Yeah.
in the chat.
Just type it in the chat. Thank you. Thank you.
There's a little movie there of the Tesla show, only the Tesla show, about 10 minutes. So if you want to see that, and you know you're never going to go to Los Angeles, and then you can see it there.
Oh, and where's the Peterson Museum?
It is almost downtown Los Angeles. Going to downtown, going to Santa Monica, and then it's down there. It's a giant museum. I mean, they have so many cars. It's unbelievable. So
Interesting. It's going to be there for a while. That's good to know.
until October 23. So it's going to be there for a while. And as I said, I mean, it's just inspiring going down there. I knew a lot about the Tesla cars, but then you see all the different engines right there, from the oldest to the newest engine, and you see how it develops. You see how the batteries are set up. So it is, if you're interested in electric cars, and it's just a wonderful event.
Good. Any other questions?
Okay, don't forget to type it in, please.
I have to find the thing first, chats.
Oh, it's on the bottom.
It's yeah, center at the bottom.
Well, my picture, my thing is gone, so.
You're
Richard,
welcome.
I think we have a question from Jim Zanetto, and we have a couple of other questions in the chat. Eugen.
If you could read them to me, because
Sure.
Yeah, I
my
can't see
thing
them.
is gone at the
So-
moment.
Katrina is asking, was Bollinger there?
Who?
Bollinger.
No.
I saw them a couple of years ago at the LA Auto Show, and I'm super bummed I haven't been back, but I wasn't sure if they were going to go to the LA Auto Show because I feel like they're focusing more on medium duty vehicles at this point. So
Well,
I
for
wasn't
people
sure.
that don't know the Bollinger cars, their initial cars look like Land Rovers.
They're kind of ugly, in my opinion. I do not, it's not a truck for me.
And then Eric says, my wife brought our second 500E to the Davis event and was stoked to hear they were returning finally, but who will sell them? Is it clear in Dodge? Who's going to do the service?
Well, it's probably going to be Fiat, because Fiat is moving to all electric cars, even in Europe. So there's not gonna, either they close the Fiat dealer here, or we'll have to see.
So
Yeah,
Fiat,
that's kind of the whole reason I was saying. It was like, because Fiat was just a word that was tacked up next to Dodge, Chrysler, everybody else. And then, when they pulled out quick. So, as it sits right now, the nearest Fiat dealership from us is Manteca. So, and they got one guy.
No, I think they have one up in Roseville. When I had my Fiat, they had one up in Roseville.
And that's okay, but they don't. At least not right now. I wouldn't have gone to Manteca if I could have just gone to Roseville, let me tell you.
so Eric, you're thinking, Fiat owns Stellantis, right? Which owns what was formerly Chrysler and Dodge. It seems like using, those dealerships to sell these Fiat cars would make a lot of sense, but.
It would. I mean, if they'll have them back. I mean, they all got kind of pushed out. Yeah, not very many people kept their Fiat labels. So just, are they going to come back and then be like, oh, come on back in, I don't know. I think that's going to be really interesting to see, and how many people are going to train up to work on one car, especially under the Dodge umbrella. I don't think service is really all that great when they were in their heyday, and it's barely there now.
Yeah.
So
Well,
Jim still has his hands up.
It's a city car. It was, if you can drive EVs, and I was not afraid to take it to the border of the battery usage, then I can get, San Francisco and back even, but it's really a second car, and that's ideal.
Good. Jim, do you want to ask your question?
Yes. Hi, Eugen.
Hi.
So the Subaru was going to come out with the Solterra, electric sort of semi off-road vehicle. Do you know anything about Subaru Solterra or any other four-wheel drive, sort of high clearance?
Yeah, it was there. It's basically the same model as the Toyota RAV4 EV, and they're not building in a large quantity. So if you're interested, I would call a dealer up and get on the waiting list.
Yeah, hey, Eugen.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Peter. Actually, the Solterra is the sister to the BZ whatever the heck they call it. They're basically identical cars. And then they both have wheel problems. So that once they fix that wheel falling off problem, they'll probably start selling them.
Okay.
Is anyone aware of any other cars of that with those capabilities?
What all-wheel drive off-road?
Yeah, all-wheel drive and clearance.
My Volvo XC40 Recharge has got pretty good clearance, all-wheel drive. It's got an off-road mode, which we've never tried. So that's an option. It's not a cheap car though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's that. I mean, there's other all-wheel drive SUVs. I don't know how much clearance they have. The ID4 is all-wheel drive. What else? The RAV4 Prime. It's not fully electric, but it's all-wheel drive. Model Y is all-wheel drive. Let's see what else. Ford Mustang, but again, it's probably not off-road vehicle. So.
All right. Well, thank you all.
Oh yeah, and Katrina said Ioniq 5 too in the chat.
Katrina said what in the chat? I didn't see that.
The Ioniq 5. It's all-wheel drive. You can get that all-wheel drive too.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, the Ioniq 5, just in case you're curious, is Motor Trend's SUV of the year for 2023.
Good point. Yeah, it's great. I test drove that earlier this year before the price skyrocketed. So it was a fun car.
And also from Katrina, the Jaguar I-Pace is all-wheel drive. And that has that interesting adjustable height thing going on, right?
And Katrina's driven all those cars.
Yeah.
It's a little easier to name cars I haven't driven. But yeah, the I-Pace, the Ioniq, all the Teslas. I think the BMW, the Volvo. I don't know about the EV6, but yeah, they're a little bit pricey to do all-wheel drive at this point. I think I personally don't know. I don't know. All-wheel drive kind of weirds me out. I'm like, you need it for like half the year a lot of times, but that's just a me problem because I don't go anywhere. So we'll see how they do, because I think all-wheel drive makes it like fun too. I've been driving the Ionic with all-wheel drive on it, and you can see the different motors like pull different power and watch it go zoom. It's very cool.
That's neat. Okay. Any others? Katrina, you still got the slides up?
I do.
So we don't have questions on this. Thanks, Eugen. I just want to thank you too for going to the auto show too, just because, the San Francisco Auto Show was canceled, the Sacramento Auto Show was canceled. It's such a hard time getting vehicles. So your photos are great. A good chance to look at what's coming and what's new in the market and seeing those. The other good thing would be to go to the DEVA EV Symposium or exhibit, sorry, that we had in September. But so the last thing I put up in here was, I just threw this thing up, is planning for 2023. A couple of things I want to talk about. One is we're thinking about doing some in-person meetings. And it would be good if we had a way to vote now. We thought about doing that, but if people feel comfortable, maybe if we could find the right venue to then have some in-person meetings again. And maybe even put them on, see if we can do a hybrid. Hybrids, I think, are, where people can view as well as be there. But would people be interested in that? So if we don't have a way now, if you have some time, put it in the chat, kind of vote in the chat right now. If you don't want to have time now, and send us a email at deva@cooldavis.org and let us know. And partly because I think it's great to get people together and just see each other again. And I think that's one reason by that September show we had was what I loved about it was actually being able to talk to people face to face and talk about EVs.
And Richard, maybe we should mention, one of the last times that we met in person was in 2019 in December, and we had the meeting in a neighborhood setting, and we leafleted the neighborhood about being there, and we had a few cars even in the middle of December when it was slightly raining to show off, and so that's one of the models for some of the meetings going forward is trying to get out a little bit into the community. Cool Davis is working with Davis Media Access right now to see if we can figure out how their technology and some of their support, we can train up volunteers to do some hybrid meetings that we can take out on the road. So that's one of the ideas that we're working with for the coming year.
Oh. Good. The other bullet on there, which I want everybody to think about really well, is volunteering for our leadership group. We've lost a member or two over the last year or so. But part of that would be, helping us come up with ideas or telling us ideas you'd like to see in our next meetings, things we can track down. And what we did in the past too, until COVID hit in 2020, was we really kept a calendar that was maybe about two meetings ahead. So we'd schedule people in, and we didn't do a lot of last minute thinking. But we need you guys to, give us some ideas. But the best part would be actually to volunteer. And we have a number of areas you can help out with. And part of that too is, right now our leadership meetings are done on Zoom meetings. But it'd be great to get more input from people out there if you just want to join in. Chris, do you want to add to that? Because
we're have started the third Saturday of the month hop up at the farmers market. And of course we need owners who are willing to bring their cars for that. And Richard's about to post a schedule and a place to sign up. So you should be looking for that. But we also need some folks who are willing to help coordinate that. So who are willing to be like to pick, a few weekends during the year and be the lead for a lead volunteer for pop-up in addition to the vehicle owner on site. And then, we just talked about in-person hybrid meetings, helping to plan our meetings. Usually the group gets together once a month and is planning out a couple of meetings ahead, brainstorming ideas, but also part of that work is just doing outreach and connecting to speakers who will speak for the DEVA meetings. And then behind the scenes, we try to keep track of all the people we talk to at all the different pop-up events that Cool Davis and DEVA do, and and there may be more of those this year, like the events we did with the Methodist Church and with Rancho Yolo. So it's always important kind of after the fact to be able to send messages and record the data from who participated in the meeting. So we need a few extra hands to help with those kinds of tasks in an ongoing way. And it helped just plan the DEVA meetings and DEVA events and join in to the planning of Cool Davis, these outreach events that DEVA participates in. So let us know if you're interested. You can put your name in the chat if you want more information, and the DEVA steering committee or leadership group meets once a month, and I'll let Richard describe, how to connect.
Good. So kind of what Chris said too is, right now, if you put your, if you're interested, put something in the chat, just said, let me know. I'm interested, and we've got your email addresses to make contact with you. The other way I think I said is, if you don't have time right now, we always open to our diva@cooldavis.org, and we'll be putting up some more information, probably sending out to you of specific things, so everybody in our DEVA list can help us with this. And like I said before, we had, before COVID, we actually had a pretty good running calendar of, the months ahead. So people would throw ideas out, and we had a way of keeping that calendar going. I'd like to do that again. So we're not, 4 weeks before the meeting or 3 weeks. And because a lot of times we have speakers that make it, but they have to back out. It's nice to have backups. Actually throw out your ideas too. We want to make sure we're talking about stuff people are interested in. And
That's right.
Yeah. So getting your input. I think last time we had the same discussion. And I think one thing that people said was they liked the car show, the showcase, EV showcase that we've done. And so we made a point of making that another opportunity to do it and make it even, I think we got even a bigger turnout this year. Definitely in terms of people we did, and definitely in terms of cars we did, some of the latest models. So anyway, we need your input from that. So feel free to send us stuff.
So Eric asked a question about always Saturdays, and the farmers market is always Saturdays, and only once a month. But there are the other events we described, like the event with the Methodist Church was on a Sunday after services, and our Rancho Yolo event, I believe that was during the week, or maybe it was a Saturday. We have done during the week events. And sometimes we try to pull together. We were about to do this in 2020 at Celebrate Davis, have a little mini car show inside of the Celebrate Davis event. And the city chamber, the Chamber of Commerce is interested in us trying to pull that off again. We didn't get to it the first time. But it'd be really cool to have a couple, like a truck and a couple, the really cool cars in a big event like that. But that, Celebrate Davis is a 4 p.m. till 8 p.m., 9 p.m. time frame in the middle of the week. But those are the kinds of opportunities to help lead a particular activity and help with organizing other vehicle owners to be on site.
And one thing I'll add about the farmer's market too is like, we're looking for that one people to, and this will do later is, getting a list, sign up list for people who want to bring their EVs in to show. That's good. But also some people that wouldn't mind sitting down with the owner and staying there during that, 4-hour period. Basically talking to people who come by, talking about EVs. And so you don't have to only talk about the EV that's there, but also how EVs affected your life and how you like driving. So if you're interested in doing that, put your name down as well. If you're not interested, sign up anyway. Need your help.
Hey,
and
Eric,
that's the only
those are, oh,
I was
go
going to
ahead,
say that's the
Richard.
only Saturday thing is the EV at the farmers market. Though the community events we did on Saturdays as well. Actually, I think we might have done it on a Sunday. We did the Methodist Church was on a Sunday. The Rancho Yolo was on a Saturday, I believe, and those were much smaller. We actually kind of fine tuned the cars we asked to get there.
We
But,
did a couple events in 2019 with some of our low-income housing locations that actually have EV charging and are promoting EVs among their residents. And we're hoping to return to those locations this year. And that's it. And we did those on weekday evenings connected to other activities that were going on in those housing complexes. I see that Eric has a question or dropped in some ideas about speakers. So please make those connections and share that with Richard. If you can, Richard, I don't know if you want to give Eric your contact information to.
I will. Eric, I'll send you a note since I got your contact from.
Oh, sounds good.
Yeah. Be great. Okay. So our next one is final questions and answers. So the one thing I was going to bring up here, which is on the top of my mind, I was concerned about the price of EVs. And so one of the things I thought that just seems like a perfect EV to get right now is the Chevy Bolt or the Bolt EV. Mostly because Chevy's been dropping their price. You can get a 2023, both of those, the EV, Bolt EV goes for like, what is it, 28, 27,000 something?
We got a 2LT 2 months ago for 28.
Yeah, I mean, great prices to get into EVs. Just a great opportunity to use those. I mean, I saw too many of these. And I know why, because I was looking for something to replace my Bolt, something bigger. I was looking at the Hyundai, a couple of others, but suddenly, I was thinking like, I don't want a $50,000 car payment. That's
The value is absurd.
You said that again, Eric?
Just the value is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and what got to me on it is my Bolt, the efficiency of using my Bolt has been so high. A lot of my stuff that I'm doing is around town, Winters, Davis, West Sac or Midtown Sac, and at those, unless I'm not, late and going 75, most of the time I'm getting tremendous efficiency. So I was so glad to drive by the gas station in that Bolt this summer. The price is going crazy. So I just thought, you know what? It's just with all these EVs going skyrocketing in price, it's an opportunity to just grab that thing. I know Barbara and Robert were looking for an EV, and so I had them in mind. You should start looking at that. In fact, even I use 2022 Bolt if somebody has their 2021. Easy to get into. So I'll be looking for you guys, and I only take about 4 or 5% off the top for finding it.
Well, it would be interesting if we could organize a group buy. I mean, it's very hard to get the Bolt EVs, but if we could organize a group buy, and where I live, a couple people are interested, but nobody's interested in paying, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 over list price.
Yeah. Oh, that's a grand idea. I like that. Eric?
What's the availability of those Bolts now? Because the other cars, you have to get on a wait list for the Mach-E, for the Mustang Mach-E, and Tesla's a wait list. So are Bolts available?
Well, I know you can order them online. You can go online to the GM site. Eric, how did you get your Bolt, your recent one?
Well, So I was able to put myself on a waiting list. So back when I got mine, I think back in July, I phoned up Future Chevy in kind of northern Sacramento-ish and Gold Rush up in Auburn. And they both wanted deposits, but nothing crazy. But I canceled the one at Future pretty hard when they tried to pull a bunch of like crazy stuff on me, then tried to guilt trip me for not wanting to pay the markup, because we have people lined up to pay 10 grand over sticker. You mean you're not going to do that? You're going back. Anyways, it was a whole mess. But with Auburn, we were able to get the EUV and the EV at MSRP to start, and then they were willing to take all of our discounts. We got the like supplier discount, a couple other things. So they were totally on board. They only tried to kind of half-heartedly tack on like one protection thing, and we said and they're like, okay. And that was it. There was no real gimmicks or anything, but they said they were stopping that for the 2022 model years, and they were going to put a 5K markup on the 23s, and the other 22 that was there while we were leaving the last time had like a 7K markup sticker on it, even though it was one that had been sitting for a year. So they're theoretically doing markups. They should be doing wait lists, but I think with a little bit of pushing, they could be convinced not to do markups anymore. Because I mean, they were getting a lot of good press, and now they're not. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we got to write our letters to Mary Barra.
So you think it's Auburn I need to hit then to get a new Chevy? I'm trying to figure out a dealership. I need to take my car to get serviced too. All right. An Auburn trip.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak to their service stuff. My wife's Bolt was a 22, and it was one that had been waiting for the recall for quite a while. And just in the time it had been waiting, it had a few kind of little problems with it, just kind of dumb things. Like, I don't even know what happened. Like the wireless, like the Qi charger was non-op, and one of the vents kind of separated, like adhesive came loose or something. And they were able to fix it up in a couple of days. It wasn't a big deal. So, I mean, I can't really talk to service that much, but how much do you really need?
Well, so I have a Volt. So that's a whole different enchilada, and I only have one car, so if it has to get stuck in Auburn, I have to like emotionally prepare for that.
Well, I guess the big overview is like nobody tried to jerk us around that much. So, I mean,
Yeah, because I've heard negative things about a number of Chevy dealerships, and so a
Oh, yeah.
neutral review is kind of the best I feel like I'm gonna get.
Actually, service-wise, Elk Grove, we just took both of our cars in for like little checkups for things that didn't work quite right, and they were both really good. I mean, our own local dealership service-wise has been like very clear. Like they communicate well.
Yeah, because they're gonna
yeah,
have to do
yeah.
a diagnostic for me. I don't expect it to be fun.
I mean, no complaints.
All right, good to hear. Thank you.
But those Chevy Volts are still my favorite cars. So yours is giving a lot of trouble, is what you're saying. Yeah.
So mine's a 2011, so she's old school throwback. But it's cold, and when it's cold, she refuses to use the battery, and I'm like, that's half the car, and that's like my favorite part of the car, and I'm going 2 miles to the grocery store. Why is my engine kicking on? And I can't tell if it's like an old thing, or if it's like, I think there's something wrong with the battery thermal management or like the wiring harness, but they're gonna have to take it apart and poke it. So I just need somebody who's not gonna, BS me about this, because I know a couple of things about cars and I don't want to deal with that.
So,
Well, I would recommend you take it to Ash and Dixon then.
Dick.
Oh,
I guess I could
yeah,
ask
yeah,
Ash.
yeah.
That's a good point. I'll have to ask Ash.
Because
did you
he's
get a-
good. He repaired a Nissan Leaf that wouldn't charge. So
Perfect. Where's Ash? He's not even here today.
Oh, Ash is busy. He actually sent me a note. He couldn't make it. He's trying to
He
fix
actually
his
wants to
shop.
have a special kind of open house event with us where we come and visit his new place.
Yeah.
So,
Just to let everybody know, we've reached the end of our agenda. If you want to say goodbye because you got something else to do, feel free. Otherwise, feel free to stay on and we'll talk about stuff. And hopefully this didn't put a dagger in the rest of it.
Bye, everybody.
I just, because I saw some of the quotes there too about plug-in hybrids. My daughter's got a Volt and it's worked out great for her. And she loves the Volt with a V. And so that's worked. But I'll tell you what, the Volt it's got like a 54-mile range. just driving on EV and, you know, driving around. She works in Davis now. So she mostly drives in Davis, and she, she charges up. She's got 62 miles on it because her efficiencies go so good just driving here instead of driving long distances. But unfortunately, they don't make the Volt anymore. And I think 2019 was the last year. So, but it's a great idea for a used car to get. And I've seen some of the other hybrid plugins, and I think Kia has a plug-in hybrid. It's nice. Quite a few of the other ones have much reduced driving range, at least in EV mode only.
Richard, I think Abaj has a question for us that put in the chat.
Oh, great.
Oh, sorry. Hi. No, it's just my first DEVA meeting. I didn't actually have a question. I just heard everyone talking about the Chevy Bolt, and I put an order in at Epic Chevrolet in SAC, and they gave it to me MSRP off the bat, but it was a factory order, and they still haven't started building it. And that was at the end of October. I'm not in any hurry, so in my case, he said 3 to 6 months, and I was completely fine with that. And I was waiting for for January anyways when the credits kick in. However, since then, he's called me twice and said, oh, look, there was a couple of cars that come in that nobody wanted. Would I like to take it off his hands? And I was like, no. So I think part of it is, yes, you're on a waiting list, but if you happen to be at a dealership, they might just give you a call and say, hey, we have this car that's in. And if you want it and you're up for it, that's another option.
Good. So did you order it online? You went online?
No, I went in person.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was within an hour, I was in and out. It was my first time, but I had never owned a car before, so it would be my first. And yeah, it was my first experience there. It wasn't all too bad.
You said Epic Chevy is what you said?
I said, yes, Epic Chevy. So what I did was, having no previous experience, I went online on Google to look at the reviews of the different like Chevy dealerships in town. I know the local one isn't particularly good. So I looked at some of the, and that one happened to have some decent reviews, and reading the actual reviews, you get a sense of like who the people are, and they seem to be quite nice. And the gentleman who's helping me was quite nice. I expected some haggling.
So that's good to hear that you had a good thing about Epic Chevy.
Yeah, I will say that so far it was just, I've only put a deposit on it. I haven't gotten to the stage of actually acquiring. I don't know if there's going to be a different situation when the car comes in. But yeah, they offered me MSRP. They tried to tack on, what is that warranty, or tell me they needed all this other, and I was like, nah, and they took it off, no problem. So yeah. Yeah.
Wow, good to know. You never know, right? And it's frustrating because it's usually just like one guy. It's not even necessarily the dealership, although it's like the dealership model, which is a different tangent we can go on that I don't think we should. But
I mean, I vaguely remember him mentioning something about Chevy saying, oh, at the end of October, because I went like October 30th, or no, it was the week before then, like October 20th something. And he's saying that Chevy had said, oh, they're not doing dealer markups anymore. So there was no markup on the car. I was not in the mood to I was just going to say no if they did that. But he was like, no, MSRP. I was like, yep, I'll take it.
All right, straightforward. Love it. That's all I want to deal with. Just give me a car in some determined amount of time in orange.
Right.
I
did get a few add-ons to it. So it's like a Premiere and stuff like that. So maybe that's why he might have been more inclined to doing that rather than maybe just the base model.
That's fair.
That could have had to be a factor as well. Fully loaded.
Yeah.
Almost.
Or not fully loaded. Thinking about it. That's exciting though. So you said it's a Bolt, right? Or is it the EUV?
It's an EUV. The Bolt comes in. Yeah, it's a Bolt.
Yeah, I've been seeing a bunch of them on the road. I'm so excited to have another one of these days.
Yeah. I'm excited too. I mean, all I've tried is the kit cars in SAC, which are the first generation. I've sat behind that. Oh, actually, it was at the EV car show, the one that in September. Yeah, I went there and I got a chance to sit in behind one of the cars, and I was like, oh, I love this. I absolutely love it. And so that's what probably prompted me to go that last step and actually put an order in.
That was probably Eric's car. Yeah, it's probably Eric's.
Yeah.
Was it white?
Oh man, there were two there.
Yeah.
Yes, there were.
Yeah, it wasn't the white one. It was the other one that was silver.
How dare you?
I'm so sorry. I happened to come in from the other side, and I didn't realize that there were two there until I was halfway through the trip. But I actually explicitly waited till after that event to put my order in, because I wanted to actually see what it looked like.
All right,
Yeah.
we'll put that down as a victory for the car show.
Yeah. Time to do
Yeah.
that after the event survey and find out how people are doing. So
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That'd
So
be-
is that your first EV?
It's my first car. I've never had a car.
Oh, wow. Well, good.
Yeah.
You made a good
Yeah.
choice.
Thank you. I know. Yeah, I know. I'm quite excited. I mean, part of the reason I bought it to even get a car this time around was because I was waiting for the EVs, and I was like, all right, this is what I want. Yeah, so I should be quite happy with it.
One of these days,
Yeah.
you'll be happy with it.
Yeah, I know.
When it appears.
when it magically appears. Yeah. I have written, like I said, a version of that, and I do quite enjoy that. Yeah, immensely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, I keep looking at the Bolt EUV myself too. Now when I'm looking at these things, and one thing that's held me back was, it is about 5-year-old technology in a way, in terms of, what they offer in some of the car. But when I look at it, it probably has everything I want. It's like a lot of things that they have in some of the cars, like artificial, engine sounds and things like that. I go, yeah, I don't think I use that too much. So it seems to hit the sweet spot. So
The whole Bolt lineup's pretty good value. I mean, it's not that fancy, but it does it. And like it's proving good. Like if the batteries hold up, then the rest of the drivetrain it's gonna be good. I understand with some of the new Electrify America charging stations, I think some Rivians are getting bricked. Like some cars are like getting bricked while they're charging. So you roll the dice with something that's new, right? What?
Like what we gotta figure out, like which part of Vaish's presentation is it the vehicle, or is it the PSE?
Just according to YouTube, woo, take it or leave it. There's something weird about the new units and their power output. So this particular YouTuber was saying it's like the vehicle requests the whole 350 kilowatts, and then it gets like 350 to 360, and then it just kind of like cannot figure out where to go, and it just kind of goes everywhere. So the car just kind of blows the relay and says, "I'm done here," like walks away because it's just unstable. So I think the implication was it's a charging station like regulation issue, and like a fail-safe just cuts it off and says, "No, I'm not taking this anymore."
Interesting, because I know it's
Wow.
usually vehicle led, right? It's like who controls it, right? It's like
the
vehicle
vehicle
usually controls it.
The vehicle, yeah. So
Well,
and it's
I mean,
especially if-
so according to this, again, I mean, this is not first-hand information. According to this, the logs were saying it's requesting 350, but the station was providing 360 plus, and it was like wobbling.
Yeah, but the car should be controlling because I think, well, no, I guess the station actually would control, right? Because it's gonna provide the voltage that gives you the power that the car requested. So yeah, so it's probably the station. Yeah. On a different subject though, I just did